Well, there were only 3 of us in our little family. We've always had a substantial dining room table. Even now, with just Jeremy and I at home, our dining table will, when extended to full length, comfortably seat 10. Although, when needed, we've managed to cram up to about 14 around the table. But let me tell you, when the table is that full, it can become quite the experience. Imagine several conversations going on at once that keep increasing in volume as so to hear over one another. Plus the fact that we've never really subscribed to a designated kids table, so add to that mix toddlers and teenagers and adults all gathered together. And I love it. Not the prepping the meal part, I leave that to my husband, but the rest of it I love. Even with the sometimes heated debates and the cup that gets knocked over, spilling juice all over the table, or when the little one decides to grab the entire turkey leg off the platter with his little hands and start chomping on it while the rest of the food is making its way to the table. While it can be a bit unpredictable, there's something about gathering around the table. Folks gathered to share a meal, to take part in something so necessary to our existence. Not only the eating part, but the connection part too. And this is where we meet Jesus tonight, around the table, sharing food and fellowship with his disciples, with those closest to him who had been journeying with him for the better part of 3 years at this point. And what unfolds around this table was definitely unpredictable for those gathered there that night, beginning with foot washing. With walking as the main mode of transportation, the feet of sandal-clad travelers in the hot and dusty climate took a beating. And it was customary for feet to be washed upon entering a home. But this washing wasn't to be done by the host. It was to be done by a servant. Someone whose job it was to tend to the dirty work of the house. Yet here we find Jesus with a basin of water and a towel around his waist, adamant that it is he who is to wash the feet of his friends, and this completely confuses them. Yet Jesus persists. And as he finishes washing the feet of his friends, he tells them that they are to do the same for one another. But this strange request is about more than clean feet. As Jesus moves around the table, he takes on the role of carer, connecting with each person as he goes. I wonder, what was each of those moments like? We hear of the dialogue between Jesus and Simon Peter, but there were other conversations around the table too. This is deep tending to that Jesus is doing here. Even though his friends don't quite get it, even though one will betray him, another will deny him, and all will scatter as he hangs on a cross. Jesus is showing them that tending to one another is key. And it's all rooted in love. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. As Jesus moves closer to his death, these are the words that he gives his friends. These are the words that he gives us. And these words, they aren't meant to be cross-stitched into kitschy decor and hung on the wall. They're meant to be lived, tending to one another, trusting in Jesus, that we have been given everything we need to live a life wrapped up in his love. To be sure, living this love will play out in various ways, but it will always involve an honest willingness to listen and tend to those around us, and it will always involve an honest willingness to share with and be tended to by others, all of which takes a huge amount of vulnerability. Years ago, when I was just getting involved with youth ministry, Gord, the youth pastor of the church that I was attending, had this crazy idea to start serving hot dogs to students at lunch on Fridays. Teen Lunch Program, or TLP for short, is what he called it. We were about a 10-minute walk from one of the local high schools, and for some reason or another, Gord thought that just maybe a few teens might show up for free lunch. So we made posters. There was a gorilla on them for some reason. I don't know why. We pulled together a team of volunteers, made a few dozen hot dogs, and with trepidation, opened the doors. The first Friday, we ran out of hot dogs, and we were scrambling to make more to feed all the kids. The next Friday, we made twice as many hot dogs. We had to scramble to make more hot dogs to feed all the kids. The third Friday, we made even more hot dogs, so we weren't scrambling in the kitchen that day, and we were able to gather around the table with the kids. Around the table, we listened to stories of struggle, hope, success, regret. We welcomed all of who these incredible young people were. Sometimes that meant that big emotions spilled out on the table, and that was absolutely okay. It was a zero judgment zone, a safe space to be seen and heard. And in the listening and in the tending to, we were tended to in ways that we'd never imagined. We were there to serve hot dogs, but we received the gift of rejuvenation and hope. We received the gift of unlikely friendships. We got to know each other by name. And instead of a meal that was served, it became a meal that was shared. A meal where everyone had a place, a meal that was crowded and loud and messy, a meal that multiplied in guests and continues to this day, close to 20 years later. A meal where Christ's love is lived into, mutually shared in unpredictable ways. A lot can happen around a table. Silly moments that make you laugh so hard that you cry. Honest but difficult conversations that you hope will bring about healing. Tending to one another's hardships and sharing one another's joys. A lot can happen around Jesus' table. It's where we bring all of who we are, to be listened and tended to, sometimes with our big emotions spilling out on the table, to be nourished together and shaped into a community engulfed in Jesus' love, where there is always room for another to pull up a chair and live out love.